Welcome to this video in which the focus is on drafting a written document for your English project. So here's a reminder of the overview of our project. We started by forming a question. You identified sources that would help you answer your question. Then you read those sources, took notes so that you could synthesize or compare and contrast the information from the different sources. We're now going to move into the part where you start preparing documents that you will use to share what you learned from your sources. So this week, our focus is on drafting. Drafting means to begin creating your final project or your final document. So here are some important questions you need to answer before you can begin drafting. Who is interested in the answer to your research question? Is it young people? Is it older people? Is it people who have particular interests? Who are these people? Because you need to know who they are so you know what kinds of written documents that they usually read. Are they people who read newspapers? Are they people who primarily read on the internet or social media? Are they people who usually just read things that they see, maybe posters in public transportation and subway stations, or maybe they see things in magazines? Knowing who the people are can help you understand what types of written documents they are likely to read or view. And then lastly, you need to answer this question of how can I present what I have learned about my research question in a way that is interesting and useful to the people that I want to know this information. So think about what kinds of visuals will accompany your text, what kinds of maybe photos or graphics or other types of images that you will want to include to help others understand what you've been learning. Here's an example of a variety of written documents. There are more than what we have on this list. These are just some examples we'll talk about. And we're going to go through and look at examples of each type of document. And this may give you some ideas about the types of document that you would be most interested in creating for your audience. So the first is a research report. This is not very different from the type of paper we wrote earlier this semester, your problems and solutions paper. A research report is often similar to an academic written document where you identify what your question was, you identify the process you used to collect your information, and then you write about the answers that you learned from your sources to answer your question. So it tends to be a very traditional paragraph-based document. A research poster is similar, except that whereas a written document is usually read in a private setting, a research report, one person reads it at a time, a research report is used in a more social setting. So when researchers and students travel to conferences and they want to teach other people about what they have been researching, they will often create a large poster that they put on the wall. And as people come by, they will talk to people about their research and explain what their research question is, what kinds of sources and how they answered their research question, what results they got from their research, and why they think that their research is interesting and useful for people. And so here's some examples of some research reports that would have those kinds of sections on them. And this can be a great way to communicate your research in a more interesting, social, and video way to other people in a more group setting. An opinion letter, sometimes called a letter to the editor, is a document that is shared with a newspaper. And the writer is writing about a topic that is maybe controversial or which there are many different opinions in society. And so the writer wants to write not just to the letter or to the editor of the newspaper or the website, but to also all of its readers to explain, here's an issue that I care about, here's what I've learned about the issue, and here are the reasons why you should agree with my opinion. So even though it is maybe an opinion letter, a good letter to the editor would include research references and other kinds of support to convince the audience of a particular opinion. So if you feel like what you have learned from your research is something that has some very strong opinions, and for which people might have strong opinions either for or against, you could take your research and create an opinion letter for a newspaper, and that could be the way that you share what you have learned. Another way to do this is to share your information through a website, a blog post, or social media posts. So there are many websites on the internet that allow anyone to create their own website where you could explain your topic, and then you could provide information that helps answer questions that people will have about your topic. It's a very visual way to do it, and it will combine both pictures and paragraphs of text that communicate what you have learned about your topic. The difference between a website and a blog post is that a website might have multiple pages, and maybe each page has pictures and text about a particular subtopic related to your question. A blog post is just one web page where you introduce your topic and then you write information with some pictures that answer your question. A little bit different from those two is the social media posts. So whether it's Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or some other kind of format, you could create a series of posts that would communicate what you have learned. And I say a series because many social media posts don't have really long text. So you would need to separate your text into smaller parts with an interesting visual for each one, and then a description of text that helps answer part of your question. So whereas a website or a blog post, you might have just one really long document, with social media posts, you might have 5 or 6 or 7 separate smaller posts that work together to be your social media campaign that sort of explains or answers the information that you learned about your research topic. The last example that I want to talk about is an infographic. So infographic takes 2 English words, information and graphic, and puts them together. And as you can see from these examples, an infographic is an image that has lots of interesting visuals that get people's attention, but the main purpose of the image is to teach people information about something. So you will have some images and then some text that explains it. So if you are more artistic or visual in the way you want to represent and present the data and the information about your research question, you might consider an infographic. You'll need to think about how you'll want to organize your information and what kinds of visuals will help explain the answers to your questions. But that could be also a very interesting way to share what you have learned. So as you consider what you have learned about your research topic, you consider your audience, then you need to think about which type of written document will be best for that audience. Do you want more traditional research report? Do you want to write an opinion letter? Or do you want to do something more visual like a website or an infographic? Think about those. And then for your assignment this week, there's 2 parts. You'll write a summary of what you think you want to share about your project, but then you'll also plan out which type of written document you think is best and why are you going to go with that written document, and what types of visuals will accompany your text to help your audience better understand and be interested in your topic. I'm really looking forward to seeing what your plans are for your written topic.